You know, when you're on a twin-engine plane, there's this feeling of comfort, right? You've got a backup. It feels like simple math. If you lose one engine, you've still got another one chugging along. But what if I told you that simple math is, well, it's dangerously wrong?
So let's just get right to it. This is the question that seems so obvious. You have two engines. You lose one, you've lost 50% of your power. It makes perfect logical sense. You should still have half your power to fly the plane. And that's the common sense assumption. But in aviation, common sense can really get you into trouble.
Because the reality is this. According to the FAA, when a light twin-engine plane loses 50% of its engines, it doesn't lose 50% of its performance, no. It can lose a staggering 80 to 90% of its ability to climb. That number you're seeing, it isn't a typo. It's a terrifying reality of aerodynamics. So how on earth is that even possible? Well, the answer comes down to a concept that is just absolutely crucial to understanding flight. It's not about the total power you have. It's about the excess power. See, a plane doesn't just need power to stay in the air. It needs a reserve, a surplus of power beyond what's required just for level flight in order to actually gain altitude. And this is where the math gets absolutely brutal.
Okay, let's break this down using the FAA's own example. Imagine our plane needs 175 thrust horsepower just to fly straight and level. Simple enough. With two engines, each making 200 horsepower, you've got 400 total. You take away the 175 you need just to stay level, and you're left with a really healthy reserve of 225 horsepower for climbing. Awesome. But lose an engine. Now you've only got 200 total horsepower. You still need that same 175 just to keep from descending. That leaves you with a tiny, tiny reserve of only 25 horsepower for climbing. Your power for climbing just plummeted by almost 90%. That, right there, is the performance crisis.
But as if a catastrophic loss of performance wasn't enough to deal with, it's only half the battle. While the pilot is grappling with a plane that can barely climb, a second, equally dangerous crisis is unfolding, the fight just to keep the airplane pointed straight. With one engine out, you get something called asymmetric thrust. That one good engine isn't just pushing the plane forward anymore. Oh no, it's also trying to aggressively turn it. It's trying to yaw the nose towards the dead engine. It's exactly like trying to paddle a canoe with only one oar in the water. You're now in this constant physical battle, pushing on the rudder just to keep flying straight.
And this whole battle for control brings us to one of the most critical airspeeds in multi-engine flying, VMC. You can think of VMC as the absolute floor. It is the minimum speed you can be going where your rudder is still effective enough to overpower that massive yawing force from the one good engine. This speed is so critical that on an airspeed indicator, it's marked with a big, bold, red line. Because if your airspeed drops below VMC, it doesn't matter how hard you stomp on that rudder pedal. The plane will lose directional control, period. It's a non-negotiable law of aerodynamics.
Okay, so performance is crippled, control is on a knife's edge. What can a pilot actually do? Well, this is where all that training kicks in. Pilots have a very specific, drilled-down procedure to fight back against both the drag that's killing their performance and the yaw that's threatening their control. It really just boils down to these two immediate goals. First, you have got to get rid of every last bit of unnecessary drag. And second, you have to fly the plane in a very specific and, honestly, a kind of counterintuitive way to make it as aerodynamically clean as you possibly can. All right, so the single biggest source of drag after an engine quits is the propeller on the dead engine. If you just let it windmill in the airflow, it acts like a giant circular air brake. In fact, the FAA says a windmilling prop can create as much drag as the entire rest of the airplane combined. The solution is to feather it. You turn the blades so they slice through the air, like a knife. This one action is absolutely critical to getting any hope of performance back. So, with that massive source of drag taken care of, the pilot turns to the second and much more counterintuitive technique, achieving what's called zero side slip. To get the absolute best performance out of the airplane, you actually have to fly in a way that feels completely and totally wrong. Think about it. Your instinct, whether you're in a car or a boat, is to keep things level. So in a plane with one engine out, your gut tells you to keep the wings level and just stomp on the rudder to stay straight. But that's the high drag, wrong way to do it. The fuselage is actually flying a little bit sideways through the air, creating a ton of drag and just destroying whatever little climb performance you had left. The correct technique is to actually bank the airplane. We're talking just a couple of degrees. into the operating engine. It feels weird, I know, but doing that aligns the fuselage perfectly with the oncoming air, and that minimizes the drag. Pilots even have a little memory aid for this. Raise the dead. You slightly raise the wing of the dead engine, which has the effect of banking you towards the good one.
And getting this right is a delicate balance. The pilot sets up a bank of about 2 degrees toward that good engine, and they know they've nailed it when the little ball in their slip/skid indicator is slightly off-center. This precise, really unnatural feeling position, that is the sweet spot. That's the zero drag, maximum performance configuration that gives them the best possible chance of climbing away from trouble.
So let's bring our two big crises together now. The pilot is managing this intense fight for control while at the same time trying to eke out every single foot of performance. And this means they are constantly managing two critical and often competing airspeeds.
This right here is the ultimate pilot's dilemma. You've got VMC, the red line, which is the absolute floor for control. You have to stay above that speed no matter what. But then you have VYSE, the blue line, and that's the precise speed for the best possible rate of climb. So the pilot has to fly as close to that blue line as they can to gain altitude without ever touching the red line. It is a true razor's edge. And that brings us to the final, and I think the most important point of all this. 2 engines don't automatically make you safer. As this quote from the FAA makes crystal clear, the hardware is only half the story. The true safety system isn't the second engine, it's the skill, the knowledge, and the proficiency of the person flying the plane. It just proves that in any high-stakes situation, redundancy is absolutely no substitute for proficiency. Which kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Where else do we put all our faith in a backup system without truly understanding the skill it takes to actually use it?